Hi there, welcome to Get Lit. I'm Pete Crooks, senior editor and senior writer at Diablo magazine, and on Get Lit, we meet with local writers and authors and talk to them about their work. Today we have a very special guest, a friend of mine, Cameron Tuttle, who's had great success with her Bad Girls guidebooks, as well as her teen series about Paisley, Hanover. Welcome, Cameron Tuttle.
Thanks, Pete. It's great to be here.
Great to see you. So your second book in a trilogy about Paisley, Hanover is just out, Paisley, Hanover, Kisses and Tells.
Yes.
What can you tell us about Paisley, Hanover?
Well, Paisley is a 15-year-old sophomore in high school. She's very fallible. She's always trying to do the right thing, but it never quite works out the way she plans. But then somehow, with the help of her friends, she miraculously kind of pulls it off. So I think she's a character that readers really relate to. And I relate to her just because she is so flawed. It's a fun character to write.
And you grew up right here in the East Bay in Lafayette, and you went to high school.
I grew up in Lafayette, yeah. I went to Acalanes High School. In fact, anybody who knows the Acalanes campus, although I think it's the old Acalanes campus, is exactly the same as the campus where Paisley Hanover goes to school. She goes to Pleasant Hill High. Acalanes just happens to be on Pleasant Hill Road, just to show you what a wild, incredible imagination I have.
Well, the first book, Paisley Hanover Acts Out, was an absolute delight for me to read. I love teen fiction and children's fiction, and I thought that was just a really fun book that was appropriate for that age group, but right up to date with Facebook and all the kind of things that the kids are doing, as well as some of the more serious peer pressure issues that come up in teen life. Talk a little bit about the audience that you're reaching and the kind of maturity of the subject matter that you want to approach.
Well, the readers are basically sort of 12 to 16 is the target audience, but I know that it's actually a good read for older people, men and women as well. It's may be prone to painful flashbacks to high school stresses. But I try to create a world that's very real. It's a little bit of what you might call heightened reality. So the lows are a little bit more dramatic and the highs are a little bit more, more exciting than a typical high school kid might experience. But we're dealing with issues of bullying. That was the sort of the main issue in the first book. And in the second book, sexting is a big plot point. A good friend of Paisley's is about to be sort of exposed, no pun intended, in a sexting kind of episode, and Paisley has to sort of help her out. So I try to weave in some sort of cautionary tales without hitting anybody over the head with a, hey kids, this is what you got to do.
Right.
And also, it's hopefully funny. I think humor is a great way of delivering any message.
Well, all of your books, from the Bad Girls Guide books through the Paisley Hanovers, are just delightful to read because there is that sense of humor that carries you through the story. But I was really impressed with Paisley Hanover because I thought it was a very substantial bit of reading. There was really a lot to think about there. It wasn't just the fluff that you would see on television programs aimed at that age group. There was really something to think about that was relevant to the way teens live.
Thanks. Yeah, I mean, I've tried to look at sort of the other types of books that are out there for teens to read right now, and there's a lot of sort of doom and gloom stuff. There's a lot of apocalyptic stuff, obviously tons of vampire stuff. But I wanted to create a series that would be a great read for guys and girls, but that would also get them to think about, the ramifications of being really mean and gossiping about even your friends to other people and what can happen. And also just, the dangers of not sort of being honest with your friends, not being honest with yourself. Paisley spends a lot of time learning lessons sort of the hard way. One of those lessons happens actually at the Walnut Festival. So in Paisley Hanover, Kisses and Tells, the second book, there's a big plot point that takes place at the Walnut Festival, which, yes, is based on the real Walnut Festival, which I went to many, many, many years ago as a teenager.
That's one of the delights of reading these books, too, and having an awareness of this area. Is there's all sorts of references to businesses and street corners, and then if they're not exactly where you think they are. You know where they might be. I remember Freddy's Pizza, a
Yeah.
non-existing pizza place anymore. It's not there
Used
anymore
to
in
be-
Lafayette, but
used
it
to
was an
be, yeah,
institution for a long
famous
time.
in Lafayette.
So
yeah.
is that where you went for pizza when you were growing-
Absolutely, absolutely. For my my 5th birthday on. So yeah.
It's nice.
And Millie's Kitchen is also in the books.
That's great. It's nice in a fictional universe that you can kind of pick and choose from your favorite places, and then if something didn't exist here in suburban East Bay, you could make it up that it does.
Yeah, I mean that's the fun of writing fiction is you do get to like, draw upon your own experiences and then embellish. Fiction is always a combination of past truths and an author's imagination. It's never purely imagination, even if you think it is. I mean, I've had people ask me, so wait, are there any characters in this book that are based on, real people from high school?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, well, I think there might be 2 characters. And I started out actually believing that. And then when I stepped back and I looked at him, I'm like, oh my gosh, whoa, he's based on him and kind of a composite of there were like 4 or 5, 6 or 7 characters that were all sort of loosely drawn from people that I knew. And some of them are sort of types or archetypes. And, often you can't tell the difference between what you've just imagined and made up that day and what's sort of been percolating in the back of your mind for
That's
years.
interesting.
Yeah.
What were you reading when you were 12 or 13?
I was reading in high school. I can remember The World According to Garp was a big favorite of mine, but that was adult stuff. But it was sort of accessible and fun, and irreverent as well, which I like. And I was reading the classics like A Separate Peace. What else did I love? Fitzgerald, a big Fitzgerald fan. That's why I ended up going east to school, because I was very caught up in the romantic notions of just going to college in New England. But yeah, I would have to say Mad Magazine was my primary, influencer way back.
Well, irreverent humor certainly is abound in Mad Magazine. Let's go back a little bit to the first book you published. Was there a book before The Bad Girls Guide?
Yes, there actually, the first book that I published under my own name was called The Paranoid's Pocket Guide, and it was basically a little bathroom book filled with hundreds of facts that would drive you either into a nervous, hysterical laughter or make you like totally freaked out and paranoid. Little facts like most homeowners' insurance policies cover destruction by asteroid. And that's all it would say, just enough to kind of make you go, huh. And, this year, 792 people will be injured by a toilet seat. That's all. It's all just enough to kind of let your imagination go. So, yeah, it was a goofy little book. It actually did really well and got me on Oprah, believe it or not.
Really?
Yeah. It's been all downhill from there. No offense, but my first TV appearance was actually on the Oprah Winfrey Show. So
Wow.
yeah, it was terrifying.
How did that go, and what did that do to your life as far as people recognizing?
Well, I didn't sleep at all the night before, so it was not one of her book club selections. Obviously, it was part of a show that she was doing on people with weird, paranoias and phobias. So it was kind of her humorous lead-in to a show on that topic, and it was great press. Like at that point, I think there were maybe 20 million viewers. So I spent a lot of time the night before thinking, if I'm really smart and funny, 20 million people are going to buy my book, and if I'm an idiot, no one's going to buy my book. So it was somewhere in between there.
And then you went on to great success with the Bad Girls Guide books.
Yeah, that was sort of an unexpected. It was a goofy little kind of quirky book. I was inspired by Thelma and Louise, which was a movie that at the time was really kind of polarizing and inspiring and powerful for women, and I think it scared men and made men angry, and it was interesting. It was about these 2 women who basically take off and hit the road and kind of break all of their own rules, and the ending is rather ominous. They end up driving off a cliff together, but I was really moved by that movie, as were so many other people, and I thought, God, there's something here about finding a time and a space to be your own person, where you can kind of recreate yourself at any stop. And that's what got me thinking about the The Bad Girl's Guide to the Open Road. And I can remember the day that the title came to me. I was reading some women's magazine, and on the left-hand page was an article about a librarian, written by a librarian. And she's like, looks like this sort of typical kind of, you know, petite, mousy woman saying, and the headline was something like, "I'm a librarian, but I secretly long to be naughty." And then on the right-hand side was I think it was a Mazda Miata ad, and it was like one woman by herself in a car, and the headline was something like, you know, "Make them wonder if you're ever coming back again." And I looked at those two ads, or one editorial and one ad, and I was like, bing, and I kind of got the title for the book. And it was really just me sort of inspired by Thelma and Louise, and realizing that you don't have to kill someone to hit the road and have fun, and you don't have to drive off a cliff at the end, but there's something really powerful for women, especially, because I think, you know, those books were really funny, but there's a thread of really sort of serious stuff, which is, I think, is why the humor has momentum and why the books did so well. And I really believe that women, especially in this type of community where I think we put a lot of pressure on ourselves to be a great daughter, a great mom, a great wife, a great employee, and to really try to be a super woman. And a lot of women kind of lose sight of their own happiness because they're so caught up in being there for other people. And so the Bad Girls Guides was an opportunity for women to kind of cut loose, kind of gave them permission to go out for a night with their girlfriends or their, you know, single friends, and just have some fun. But there really is sort of a foundation of truth there that I think resonated with a lot of people. And the books also blew me away. I mean, I wrote the first book, it was just, I thought it was like this little pink book about road tripping. And I would get letters from women saying that these books had changed their lives, and I didn't think anybody would take them seriously. But I mean, there was a woman in Seattle who was dying of cancer, and she and her close circle of friends were using the Bad Girls Guides as sort of their Bible to have fun around this woman's last few months of her life. So it was really an unexpected ride for me, I have to say.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
One thing that worked so well about those books was the sort of spin on guidebooks and the format that you presented the material with, the plastic cover and everything. It was like a photos travel book or something like that. Can you talk about that marketing and the packaging of the books to present it in a creative way?
Yeah, it's kind of an interesting story because there were no girl guides then. This was actually the first sort of like girl guide to whatever. There had been the Preppy Handbook, but that was when I was in high school. That was eons ago. And I knew we wanted to do sort of a faux field guide, like an Audubon guide, so that the covers are vinyl. They happen to be sort of porn star pink vinyl in the case of my books, but the initial plan was to make them black, actually, a black vinyl, sort of with a pebbly cover and a pink type. But the pink ink wouldn't stick to the pebbly vinyl cover. So at the last minute, the very last minute, my publisher twisted my arm and said, "They had this really outrageous, obnoxious porn star pink cover. Can we use this?" And I was like, "Oh, I hate pink. I hate pink. Oh, okay." And so it ended up really sort of as a production. It was I mean, the plan to do a vinyl cover was always there from the start, but the fact that they ended up being pink was sort of an accident, and it really was it was a happy accident, needless to say, except for the fact that we all now have to look at a lot of books with pink covers.
How many Bad Girls guidebooks were there? Have there been?
There were 4. The Bad Girl's Guide to the Open Road, which was about road tripping, and The Bad Girl's Guide to Getting What You Want, which was sort of the, you know, getting a job, getting a date, getting a life, kind of that was sort of the foundation. And that second book actually kind of gave me a chance to go back and explain a little bit more about the bad girl philosophy. And then the third book was The Bad Girl's Guide to the Party Life, and then The Bad Girl's Guide to Getting Personal. And then there were like 25, 30 ancillary products, an embarrassing number of pink bad girl products.
But that's something that you, that you really kind of built your publishing empire around, is that you kind of made sure that you own that Bad Girls brand rather than handing it off to a publisher. Is that right?
Well, in theory, yes. I was working with Chronicle Books on that, and they have not only a publishing division, but a gift division. So it was very easy for us to work together to create a number of other different types of products, from postcards to calendars to photo albums to journals, lots of different types of things. But ultimately, I own the copyright, but they own the products. They were the manufacturer. So, and they still are basically in control of what happens. So I'm not sure I would recommend this as a business model to other aspiring authors.
I gotcha. Now, there's also a website, and we've been speaking with a number of the authors on Get Lit about optioning their books into film and television. And
yes.
in most cases, it's been, well, maybe something's going to happen. In the case of The Bad Girls Guide, there was a television show starring another best-selling author, Jenny McCarthy, in the lead. Can you talk a little bit about your experience with The Bad Girls Guide television show?
That happened in, that was in 2005, actually. And I had sort of the best of experiences and the worst of experiences in that I wanted to be involved in the adaptation, partly because I've always wanted to write for film and television, and also because the Bad Girls Guides, there's no plot and there are no characters, so there's this wide open playing field for adaptation, and I didn't want it to really be mishandled. Ultimately, it was mishandled, and I was there in the room every day. So, but it was a great experience to start with. The development was really fun. I was partnered with a couple of other experienced writers. And instead of me just nominally getting to write the pilot, which was what I had hoped for, they actually were super, really supportive and taught me and worked with me. So it was a really great learning experience. We wrote a funny pilot. Jenny McCarthy was cast in it. She was one of the unexpected pleasures of, while she's not a gifted actor, she's a great personality, and she was a lovely person to work with. She's not necessarily an actor that women relate to. I think men sort of like her more than women, so it was an interesting choice. But after we got picked up, so we got an order from UPN, which is no longer around. I like to think of the Bad Girls Guide TV show as one of the shows that killed UPN, because I think it was their last season that was around. But we got a pickup order, and then they always test the pilots, and then you go back and make some changes. Well, one of the people who didn't test that well was Jenny McCarthy, so we had to make a lot of changes. And somehow during that process, the two women who were the other co-creators, whom I really enjoyed working with, got fired. I still don't really know why. And then the project circled the drain for 3 or 4 months. And like anything, especially in that business, if you lose the momentum, you're toast. It's over. So I was just going for long dog walks, sort of thinking about what might have happened. And then at the last minute, they got another showrunner on board, and we actually went forward. We produced 6 episodes, which wasn't a lot, but we actually did get something on air, which is pretty amazing. And that was the second part, which was sort of a nightmare, which I won't go into great detail. Okay. But all those stories that you hear about Hollywood, they're true.
Well, I remember when we did a cover story about you right before the TV show came on, and I was speaking with you quite a bit on the phone, so I was writing that piece.
Yeah.
And I remember at one point I was talking to you, and you're just like, I'm on set. Hang on for a second. Wow, Rudy Giuliani just walked right by. I was like, what's he doing on the set of Bad Girls Guide,
Yeah. It was fun. We shot on Paramount Studios, which is a beautiful studio. It's one of the old, it still looks like a classic old film studio, unlike some of the other ones that look very modern now. They sort of look like business parks. And there's a great view of the Hollywood sign. I can remember talking to you on the phone. I'd go out of my office and sit on the fire escape, which is where I could see the view of the Hollywood sign, and had many conversations out there on the fire escape. Never tempted to jump, but I'm sure other people have jumped from there. No, it's dicey. It's an industry that not only hires sort of damaged people, it rewards them. So a lot of people who are talented, but maybe not the most stable, shall we say, keep moving up and up and up and up. So there was a lot of recreational activity in the writer's room, I'll say. And I'm not just talking about eating red licorice for breakfast, right, although that happened too.
Well, that's fascinating, and there may be a book in that down the road. So when did the Paisley Hanover idea come to you, and was it always intended to be a series, so you'd see Paisley go through high school in different chapters?
Yes, it was. I was actually working on a different novel when I got a letter from a young editor at Dial Books, who was a fan of the Bad Girls Guides, and she asked me if I had ever considered writing for a younger audience. And in fact, I had, because so many teens and tweens would steal their mother's or their aunt's or their big sister's Bad Girls Guide and hole up in the bathroom reading things that frankly weren't that bad, but seemed like, some good naughty fun. And I felt like there was definitely, there was an audience there for the type of writing that I do, but I hadn't figured out exactly the right way to do it. And I wasn't sure that, nonfiction books in that age are sort of like the kiss of death. It's kind of like, a book written by a doctor about your body parts. You're like, no way, I don't want to read that or write that or be in this, same section with that. So I was looking for a way to write for this audience and do something that was fun and creative. And my editor sent me this letter. I started thinking about it. I put the novel that I was working on aside, and literally in a week I had the name, Paisley Hanover, which just kind of popped into my head one day, and the plot for the first book, and we went back to them and said, what do you think of this? So they said, we like it. How about 3 books worth? So I had a nice little multiple book deal, which was great, and an excellent editor to work with. And Paisley, the initial plan was Paisley would be, there would be 3 books, and the first book would be her sophomore year, the second book her junior year, and the third book her senior year. I have a problem with time in the real world. I'm sort of like time deaf. Some people have like bad sense of direction, bad sense of time, no sense of time. All of Paisley's books take place in about a 4-month period in her sophomore year. So there's a lot going on.
It's a busy year.
Yeah, busy year. And I've heard people say, wow, there's a lot going on. A lot happens to Paisley, but it's also kind of accurate of the high drama and the, when you're 15, everything that happens matters so much. And honestly, it hasn't changed that much from when we were in high school. Right. Just adding some text, a lot of texting, some Facebook references, a few YouTube references, and it's kind of like, good to go.
But the geography of a school campus is well sort of described in the Paisley Hanover books. And one thing I remember about Paisley Acts Up is that she's in the school library a lot.
Yes.
Since we're here in the beautiful new Walnut Creek Public Library, I'm curious if you can talk a bit about your experiences growing up and using libraries, and also now, how do you use libraries as far as using them for research or access to materials?
I love libraries. Who doesn't? When I was little, I can remember going to the Lafayette Library every week and checking out as many as you could. At a time, I think it was 12, which was like a big stack of books for a little kid to carry. And so that was a really big part of my childhood, and sort of reading a lot and opening my imagination. And I actually researched the Paranoid's Pocket Guide entirely at the San Francisco Public Library. This was sort of, I won't say pre-internet because that makes me sound like I'm really old, but it was, I needed to be there at the library because that was the best access to the information that I wasn't even sure what I was looking for. So it was all about the search and the exploration. And yes, a very important scene takes place in the school library in the Paisley Hanover series, and there's a really cool character who's one of the librarians, so it's sort of a nice homage to librarians who play such an important role. But I think libraries are such an important part of any community. They're like a gateway to endless adventures, and if I were going to be holed up someplace hiding from my parents, for example, I definitely want to do it at a public library. And this one looks great. Yeah. Lots of places to hide out here.
Walnut Creek and Lafayette, both of these libraries, I grew up coming to the former Walnut Creek Library and loving it because of its, I remember checking out Matt Christopher's baseball books and the Chronicles of Prydain by Lloyd Christopher and all these geeky books that I would read. And the Lafayette one, they were just these tiny little shoe boxes of libraries, and now we have these amazing facilities, beautifully thought out with all the high-tech, elements that are appropriate.
Well, they're really like a sanctuary, and I live in San Francisco now, so it's a bit of a trek for me to come out here, but I would absolutely, I can see myself, throwing my laptop in the car or hopping on BART and coming out here just to be in the space to work, because you're surrounded by great light, great energy, great creativity, and it's such a comfortable and just a creative, safe place to be. So I dig it. I like this place. I'm
Yeah.
coming back.
Good. Well, it's great to see you here in the new Walnut Creek Public Library, and it's always a treat
Thank
to pick up your newest book, because you're such a funny and creative writer, and there's a real nice soul to Paisley
you.
Hanover. I really like her, and I want to see what she does next year in school. So congratulations on the success of this series. They're great books,
Thank
great
you.
for young readers, and I read it by the pool and just thought it was a treat from start to finish, so I'm a 40-year-old man. Anyway, great to see you, Cameron Tuttle. And thanks for watching Get Lit. Make sure to tune in regularly, because we've got all sorts of fantastic Bay Area authors, and it's a really nice treat to get to know them and find out how they come up with these creative books. So thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time on Get Lit.